Rob, welcome to the Takeout. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Major.
Talk to me about soybeans and Iowa farmers right now.
Sure. I think one of the biggest pieces of this that's generally missed is during the first Trump administration, the Chinese government decided to get ready for a continuation of trade wars. So they built the single biggest deep water port on the planet in Peru. Just like that, because they said, if we are going to have disagreements about trade with the United States, the one place that you can really hit the United States on trade is agriculture. Well, then we, being China, they want to have the ability to bring South American soybeans, South American corn to China at a lower cost. Let's quit pulling it all the way around South America. Let's just take it from Brazil and Argentina over to Peru, load it into the biggest ships on the planet because you can pull them right up to this deep water port and bring them home. They were ready for this. They were ready for a second administration under Donald Trump.
And now it's come.
And
now
they're
boycotting it.
And we've had 0 orders for soybeans in the United States from China. 0. And the only person in the Iowa delegation that is willing to point out how terrible this is Chuck Grassley. The other 5 of them, our other U.S. Senator and our 4 members of Congress, they are, I think, betraying the people who they are supposed to represent because they're really only concerned about pleasing one man. Don't say anything bad about what he's doing. I know it's been terrible for all the people I'm supposed to represent, but I have one job here, and they believe that that is for them to represent their party.
Are you seeing cracks in the Iowa economy?
Yeah. Oh, our economy is in 49th place in the country. It's Iowa and North Dakota, the only 2 shrinking economies in the country right now. And it's going to get worse. And again, this is something that Chuck Grassley said. He said this is, to him, reminiscent of the 1980s. I was born in 1982, so I don't have real recollections of this. But everybody in Iowa, whether they were there or they just know of it, understand that the 80s were a horrific time for our state, where a lot of farmers, Major, hurt so much that they ended their own lives because of the shape of their farms and the shape of their business.
Representative Don Bacon from neighboring Nebraska has said Nebraska and Iowa right now is in a recession.
Yeah.
True?
Oh, yeah. That's what it looks like from all the numbers that I've looked at. Yeah, I mean, we had literal negative growth a few quarters in a row. We just had a 10%, if you go April to April, that's an older number, but April to April, 10% drop in state tax receipts.
And you blame this on President Trump?
I look at this and I say, right now, we're talking about ag policy that is clearly his decision. I'm not interested in assigning blame. I'm just interested in accountability. And he is making those decisions, but the people who are represented to elect the people of the state of Iowa, they're not doing anything about it. They're not fighting back on behalf of the people they represent. In addition to that, look at what's going on in Des Moines at the state level, right? They passed a massive school vouchers bill that has no rules for how that money gets spent. They literally, after we uncovered a record amount of misspent money in my first term as state auditor, passed a law making it harder for the auditor's office to find misspent money. Now 8 different categories of records that state agencies are supposed to hide from us, right? They have built a $900 million budget deficit. This was before our economy tanked. I mean, they came in last spring, before those April to April numbers came out, and they made this a deficit year. And they say, oh, well, we've got this surplus, we'll use the surplus to pay it down. That surplus is just one-time money. It came from the Biden and the Trump administrations. It's gonna, when it's spent, gonna be gone, and there's no replacing it. Then what? I mean, they have no real plan that I've heard to actually right the fiscal ship.
When President Trump says, as he has a couple of times recently, that tariff money will be used to help soybean farmers in America, I think he means Iowa and others. Yeah. Are you receptive to that?
I want Iowa farmers to do well. Do you know what I want them for? Number one, though, I want them to have a market for their product. They don't want to be dependent upon payments from the U.S. government. They don't want the product, right, what they grew, to sit and rot in a bin. They want it to go out there and to feed people. They want a market. Payments? Probably a good idea when you're destroying someone's livelihood. But again, to Chuck Grassley's point, that's not something that the president can just do. They did that the first time around. That bank account that they used has a fraction of what it had at that time because they used it for those payments last time. So that time now, it's probably going to have to go through Congress here. Doesn't seem to be a lot going through Congress these days.
Speaking of Congress, are you supportive of Democratic attitudes in regards to shutdown?
You know, if I can tell you what I'm supportive of here, honestly, it's ending the two-party system.
Ending the two-party system?
Yes.
Okay.
I say this at
Please
every
continue.
Yeah, I say this at every one of my town halls. I am one of those people who is sick of partisan fighting. I don't think that either party at its core is truly focused on actually solving people's problems. They're more focused on just beating up on the other side.
But you are a Democrat.
When I first registered to vote, I registered as an independent.
Okay.
I did
But
that
you're seeking the
because
Democratic nomination for governor.
I am, and I have run twice and won twice as a Democrat. I re-registered as a Democrat in my early 20s because I had to vote in a primary. You're never going to convince me that it is right to tell people who are independent voters, who arguably are the most faithful to our founders' vision, right? They're the ones who are out there saying, no, I will not choose factionalism, right? We're going to have an election paid for with your tax dollars, and sure, you've got a constitutional right to vote, but we're not going to let you participate as our private club chooses one of your only two options, right? This is a broken system. I think that both parties would actually function better and we'd have more problems solved if we had more than two options. It doesn't mean that the parties themselves, right, are the problem, but the system is broken. And this government shutdown, I think, is a great example of that.
But the two-party system will last for at least another month. I think we can be pretty confident about that. So how does this shutdown end? And what do you want Democrats to do?
You'd have to ask somebody that spends time out here.
You're just passing through. I get it.
I'm literally passing through 2 terms as state auditor. Prior to that, I was the chief public corruption prosecutor in Iowa. I had an internship out here when I was in college, never had a job out here.
Have you evolved politically because you gave money to Howard Dean and you caucused for Barack Obama?
I liked Dean because he was an outsider, and I liked Obama because he was an outsider. I still do like outsiders. So
But you fashion
there is
yourself
that.
as.
I feel like I am one. Again, you know, this has been my truth my whole life. I picked being a Democrat in part because of my faith. I think the Democratic Party at its best is the party for the little guy. And because I remember Bill Clinton balancing the budget and using the surplus to pay down the debt, which to me is a good idea. But I was doing that because practically I had to in order to vote in a primary, right?
Right.
I didn't leave my independent mind behind. I think for myself, if that makes you an outsider, then we are in big trouble.
You have talked about the Democratic Party and Jesus being for the little guy. Do you think the Democratic Party is still for the little guy or little gal? And do you think it has become estranged from the idea of talking about faith or even invoking the name Jesus?
Yes, to the latter piece. To the first piece.
That estrangement you think is real?
Yeah, I do think it's real. I think there's a lot of people who say, I want separation of church and state, is what they say. Well, that means separation of church and state. A candidate is not the state. I am a human being. Every candidate is a human being. Most voters, they know you're going to be presented with decisions that you have to make as an elected official. They want to know who you are. They want to know what motivates you. Because you're going to make decisions, and they're not going to be things that we talked about in this campaign, and I want to know who you are so I can understand who I'm putting in there. I think talking about whatever it is that motivates us is good. I think that actually matters less what faith it might be and more about that you are open about it and happy to talk about it with people. And I think that we have done a poor job, the Democratic Party, has done a poor job of welcoming that. The first part of your question, are they still the party for the little guy? I hope they are. I'm trying to make sure they are.
You have doubts, though.
Well, I do. I mean, if you look at the direction that we seem to be aimed oftentimes and who we seem to be talking to, it oftentimes seems like it's a conversation of college graduates for college graduates. You know, one of the things we did in the auditor's office is we removed the requirement to have a 4-year college degree. If you have a 2-year accounting degree, good enough. I don't care that you are qualified to do the work while we're in the middle of a nationwide accountant shortage. I don't care whether or not you have a piece of paper that someone else says is the right piece of paper.
I'm usually intrigued by the origin story for people who get into public life. And yours, if I have this correct, started when you were in high school, and you spent about 2 years talking to community leaders on behalf of a skate park.
Yeah.
What did that teach you, and why was that so important?
It taught me that people who disagree and who are even upset with each other can actually work together to solve a problem. Skateboarders, property owners who are annoyed with skateboarders for skateboarding, right? And that's what it was.
Right.
We had this moment. It was a 2-year project. The skate park is still there. When I was home in Decorah, we had my dad's 75th this summer. I'm watching kids skate on it. 25 years later, I am 43, so that math checks out.
Yep.
But this is one of those things that I just think people.
And the issue was property owners were angry with skateboarders skateboarding where they were not comfortable with. And you said,
Yeah.
let's build a skate park so there's a place for them to go.
Yes.
If I have it correct.
Yeah, and it wasn't just immediate agreement. I mean, this was a 2-year project. But it taught me, and by the way, I want to say too, this was to me, and it gave me an interest in public service and in the idea of public service in general. I didn't actually work with elected officials. I did a brief presentation to the city council. They were like, go talk to Rick Edwards. He's the guy that runs the Park and Rec department. And so I talked with the Leslie Nope of,
Right, exactly.
of Decorah, Iowa, population 7,000 or 8,000. And Rick Edwards is the guy who worked on this with us. He was just a guy whose job it was
Standing in frame polar.
Yeah, exactly. His job was just to do Parks and Rec, right? And so I'm working with a guy who just works for the people of the city of Decorah. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to run for office, but it did make you be a believer that our system of self-governance, if we want to work together, can actually work to help us solve our problems.
And would you imagine that what you learned in the skate park scenario is applicable across any other political issue?
Yes. In fact, the idea of different people who are different working together led me to run for state auditor. Like I said, I had been the chief public corruption prosecutor. I had noticed that all the office had was auditors and accountants, and they are good at what they do, but they would put together special investigations, and I would be my job then to take them into court. And they didn't always work in court because those folks didn't know the courtroom rules. They're very smart, they're very well trained in what they do, but they weren't lawyers, they weren't in a courtroom. And so I thought, well, the auditor's office needs people who think differently working together to do a better job with their investigations for the courtroom. Once I got elected, I actually appointed an independent and a Republican who had made campaign contributions to my opponent to the most senior positions in the office. That's different people working together. That's not politics, right? People who really are into politics, they're like, Sand, what are you doing? Like, that's not how you do this. What's wrong with you? You're supposed to punish people who oppose you. You're supposed to reward people who support you. That's how you get people scared of you, right? What if I don't want people to be scared of me? I'm not sure I can scare them. Again, I know I'm technically 43, but I know I don't look it too. But this to me, this is public service, right? When the election's over, you say, hey, I won. Election's over, but come on board. Broken clock like you, write twice a day. I'd like you to have you there so that when I'm almost wrong, you can point that out.
Right, almost wrong.
Almost wrong.
When you were at Brown, you were a Truman scholar.
Yeah.
What would you tell youngsters who know nothing about Harry Truman and whether or not he's still relevant within the modern Democratic Party?
I think that one of the wonderful things about Truman's story actually goes back to what we were talking about in terms of education. Last president that didn't go to college. You read stories about him. He was a man really driven by a strong sense of beliefs, a strong sense of who he was, and a strong sense of what the right thing to do was. And the way he made that decision always makes me think of that Mark Twain quote, don't let your schooling interfere with your education, right? He was an incredibly bright man. He actually, despite having not gone to college, did some level of correspondence courses to get a law degree, right? Didn't finish it.
Right.
But here's a guy who...
A lot of varied experiences, some successful, some not successful.
Correct. And then there he goes out to Washington to be the vice president to FDR, right? From this incredibly well-known, powerful, well-connected, well-educated family, and he's just this
hayseed from Missouri.
Hayseed from Missouri, as he would say himself, right? What I love about the Truman story is there's this quintessential Americanism where it's just like, you believe in yourself, you believe in doing the right thing, and you feel comfortable enough doing that you are willing to make hard decisions and say a prayer that it's the right choice and move on.
And you don't put up with nonsense.
And you don't put up with nonsense.
Other thing he would say all the time.
Yeah. Buck stops here.
Tell me about, the hot lotto fraud story.
Sure.
You wrote a book about it. Give me the best highlights of that.
Well, the easiest thing to get anyone interested, number one, largest lottery rigging scheme in American history, so that's interesting. Number two,
Largest fraud scheme in American history. Okay.
lottery rigging scheme.
Lottery rigging. Okay.
I think Barry Madoff, dollar-wise,
Probably better.
puts us to shame.
Yeah.
But largest lottery rigging scheme. Courtroom drama, right? I had a trial where national news coverage thought that the defense was going to win out. We won. Bigfoot hunters. There are people involved in the case who would spend their free time in the woods looking for Sasquatch.
Okay.
So if you want to read the book, it's called A Winning Ticket,
Yeah.
or The Winning Ticket. The Washington Independent Review of Books called it a favorite read of the year. If you're not a book reader, there's a documentary.
And the
out.
essence of it was rigging a lotto.
Yeah. Inside, well, I don't want to give too much away.
Right,
but yeah,
right.
Inside job.
So the reason I'm curious about that is there is a conversation that's been running through American politics for the better part of a decade, maybe longer, that our entire system is rigged. And I wonder if you're comfortable with that phraseology, because to me, that means there's no chance, that it is not reformable, that it's just rigged and you have to either be angry or sad. And those are your two options, because a rigged system can't be fixed.
I think there's.
Are you comfortable with that phraseology?
So it depends on, I think, what specifically you're talking about. And when I hear people say that word, I'm going to quote Mark Twain for the second time in this interview, which is 2 more times than probably I've ever done it before.
Okay.
But I really love his quote. Patriotism is loving your country all the time and your government when it deserves it. There is a sense that I think is fair to talk about how outcomes favor the well-connected, outcomes favor insiders, outcomes favor special interest groups, because they've got the access, they've got the power, and those are the things that really help them get ahead when your ordinary, hardworking person has to scrap and scrabble to just sort of stay where
And that
they
gives
are.
traction to the sense that it's rigged.
Yeah, it does. Now, but there's a different place, which is the conversation about whether or not election outcomes are rigged, that actually gets me kind of steamed, because I love this country. We start every one of my town halls, actually, by singing the first verse of America the Beautiful on this campaign. That song, America the Beautiful, I think is a really wonderful way for people to sing together, because it's a pretty easy one to sing.
Right. Not as hard as the national anthem.
Exactly, exactly. But I get angry when people who know better go along with the idea that, that the 2020 election was rigged. It's one thing for some person to say it. It's another thing for ordinary people to hear that one person say it and kind of believe it. But the people who know better, who should be defending America, who should be sticking up for this country, what they should be saying is, hey, I'm a proud American. We got a lot of problems, but we're pretty good at democracy. We're one of the founders of democracy. And you say what you want about a lot of the different problems we have. We defend American democracy. And I don't like it when people who know better, who have won elections, who know how this stuff works, let that stuff go by without sticking up for our country.
As I thought about that, and I wrote a book about this, the 2020 election, called The Big Truth.
Yeah.
I was a very important part of the story because there was an election for Congress in Iowa in 2020 decided by 7 votes.
Yeah.
That was legit. Biden's victory by 7 million somehow wasn't.
Great point. How can you trust?
Those are just facts, folks.
Yeah.
Those are just facts.
Right. How can you trust a 7-vote outcome?
Margin was pristine and utterly acceptable.
Right.
And 7 million wasn't.
Great point.
I'll just throw that in there.
Yeah.
It's my show. If you were governor, is there any circumstance you can imagine where you would agree to a Trump administration request to deploy the Iowa National Guard outside of Iowa?
Well, what if there's a national disaster?
Okay.
Right, of course. If there's a national disaster.
How about for immigration or
help.
law enforcement?
What if
of
there's,
the kind we have seen so far in 2.0?
I want to say this, okay? My drivers are not party. So maybe it's President Trump. Maybe if I'm elected, in the second half of my term, it's some Democrat who in many ways is very similar to Donald Trump in their willingness to use power. I'm not going to care which president it is or which party they're in. I'm going to be looking at what is the situation, what are the facts on the ground, what's the Constitution, what's the law say, and what's public safety want, okay? We had a public records request from the DNC when I was state auditor. We want all allegations of wrongdoing by Kim Reynolds. We told them, we're not giving you anything because we don't think we're supposed to under Iowa law. Major, they sent us the records request a second time. Like we had missed the letterhead. I mean, I don't know, it was like, it was the same thing, right? And we just told them the same thing again.
Right.
I really don't care about party affiliation.
That was a pressure tactic on their part.
I don't know. It felt like one. I didn't notice where it was from. Or I didn't fail to notice where it was from the first time, but it seemed that way. I'm going to do the right thing. I'm serving everyone in the state of Iowa, Democrats, Independents, Republicans, and I don't care who it is that asks me to break the law. If they're asking me to break the law, the answer is going to be no.
Speaking of that, Kim Reynolds, current governor.
Sure.
He's the most partisan auditor I think we've had in state history. He's opposed to anything I do. That's the governor talking about you.
Yeah.
How'd you respond to that?
I've supported the governor's move to restrict cell phone access in public schools. I've said that her state government reorganization, I wouldn't have done it exactly the same, but also we didn't need 36 cabinet level agencies, right? When there was a rumor during COVID going around that they were rigging the numbers to help keep the positivity rating low at the beginning of the pandemic, we audited that. We found out it wasn't the administration's fault that the numbers keep getting added in late. When we found out it wasn't their fault, we didn't stop our work. We continued our work. We issued the report. We told the public, this is not the Reynolds administration fault. I went around, I did 100 public town halls that year, as I do every single year, at every single one of them. I told the local media and I told every person in attendance, this issue with this low positivity rating becoming higher later on is not the Reynolds administration fault. It's the fault of these private labs that just weren't built to handle this volume of testing that was flowing through, right? I've been fair. Some people, when they're accustomed to getting everything that they want, see someone who might occasionally say, no, I'm not going to do that, and feel that that's in some way unfair.
Former Governor Terry Branstad called you a phony and a liberal.
Yeah. You should hear what he said about the lottery rigging scheme. He had a lot of nice words to say about our work in that one, though.
I want to ask you about a county in Iowa. There are many counties in Iowa. Dubuque, it's the 8th largest. I'm going to give you some numbers. 2008, Obama carries Dubuque County 60-39 over John McCain. 2012, Obama carries it 56-42 over Mitt Romney. 2016, Trump carries it 47-46 over Clinton. 2020, Trump 50, Biden 48. 2024, Trump 53, Harris 45. That is consistent with every county in eastern Iowa along the Mississippi River.
Yeah.
They were Obama counties in 2008. They are all now staunchly Trump counties. Some of those counties have seen the movement of 40 points.
That's Howard County.
Yeah.
Next county over from my home county.
What is that about?
Dare,
what does that tell you?
Dare I, on your show, ask you a question?
Okay.
All right. This could be a very big mistake on my part.
Let's roll.
A lot of people say, "Oh, Iowa, how has it changed?" It actually really hasn't. We're one of the slowest changing populations in the nation. So I have a different question, a better question, because we haven't changed. Here's a better question: how are Barack Obama and Donald Trump the same?
They were both outsiders.
Correct.
Right. Very different.
Very different. In tone,
attitude, policy, outreach,
yes,
inclusiveness, etc.
But both of them were who they were, right? Very authentic to themselves. And both of them challenged their party's orthodoxy, not just the politics, but also their party too. And they said, we're going to do things differently. There's a ton of people in this country, like me. We talked earlier, ending the two-party system. There's a lot of people who, yes, they understand Democrats versus Republicans, but that isn't the only thing that they see. They see insiders versus outsiders. They see the Fed and the Fed up. They see public servants versus politicians. And they have different scales. These counties voted mostly for Barack Obama and Donald Trump because they were both outsiders who wanted to change the system. And these are counties that have seen hard times. They remember better times. and they're pretty fed up with politics as usual. This is my home turf.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I grew up. There's a lot of people in this country who want people to think that that means it's a party divide. People stand at the ready in both parties to say to both parties, no, 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 no. You're done dividing us. You've had your turn. We're taking away your special privileges. We're going to have a democracy run by the people of the state of Iowa, not just these two private clubs.
Rob, before I let you go, because I know you've got to get on with other things,
Sure.
the Wall Street Journal in its profile of you noted that you quote the Bible, you carry a handgun, you're a deer hunter, and as you mentioned earlier,
Own. Two.
6 hours, what the Wall Street Journal said.
You should, correct, and you should see the deer that I shot a week ago, 209 inches. But I'm getting distracted because I still can't stop.
Is that an
deer.
oversimplification of who you are and why you matter in the future of the Democratic Party?
Thank you for asking that. What I desperately want a conversation to be about when it talks about my politics is about how both parties work together to make us hate people that we love. We're at a place in this country where, I think this was a John Adams quote, something close. His greatest fear was two parties united only in their hatred of each other. These little touch points are things that are who I am. I shot guns when I was a kid, won a gun in a raffle when I was 13 or 14. I bow hunted when I was a kid. We went to church when I was a kid. They're all important parts of my life. But when it comes to politics, that's who I am. The politics for me has to be about how weak we are as a people because we are told to hate people who vote differently than us. This is wrong. And I think that everybody understands that it's wrong, and it's time for us to start talking about it before things get worse. What that means is that people in their own party have to stand up to their own party. Because if we're not doing that, again, we're just shouting at each other. So people got upset with me when I said, before President Biden announced that he was going to run for re-election, when I said, yeah, Nikki Haley's right, we should have cognitive tests, and actually we should have a hard age limit, 72 years old. 72? Thank you for your service, enjoy your retirement. And people got upset with me about that. I think that's the truth. We have to get to a place where we can challenge our own parties, but more importantly than that, where we don't have to put up with the lesser of two evils all the time. If we can get there, we're gonna have real accountability because we will actually be able to have the people be in charge of politicians instead of feeling like we're under their thumb. That is the core of what I want for people in the state of Iowa, because I know that's the key to unlocking things like real accountability, like lowering costs, like improving our cancer rating. We are the worst in the country, only state with a growing cancer rate, like cleaning up our water quality. It's once we have a political system where elected officials actually are incentivized to work together and to be kind to each other, then we can start solving problems again. Right now, it's just bomb throwing.
Rob, I appreciate the time.
Me too. Thanks.
Thanks for coming in.
Yeah, thanks for having me.